Yes, everyone made it. Okay. So, where did everyone do their observations?
I
I
did
did
mine.
mine Friday night. Well, I had two different places I did. Friday night I took my daughter and a bunch of friends to a National Honor Society where they went and volunteered at a food bank
Uh-huh.
preparing like meals and stuff. So I watched the six of them interact together. But then I also thought it'd be interesting to be a casual observer at church yesterday, which
Aha.
was pretty entertaining.
I did. I watched outside the school on Friday as I was picking up my kids. And we kind of live in a wealthy area, and so it's a lot of the ladies at lunch crowd. That was kind of interesting.
I watched church because I don't really have group places that I typically go and hang out. So it's basically church, and then I kind of observed at the barn that I'm riding a horse up at a barn.
Okay.
So the people, as I was brushing the horse, the other people in the barn, I was distractedly observing.
Mine was at my school that I work at, and I watched the little kids and how they interact with each other.
Okay. Cool. So let's see. What do we need to do? Did we need? I don't think. Did we need to go through the questions for our observation, or do we just go through the questions at the bottom? I wasn't exactly sure.
Maybe we could just quickly summarize each of our places and what we
Sure.
saw.
Sure.
Okay, you want me to go first? I've got my Word
Yeah.
document here.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think teenagers are beyond amusing to watch for nonverbal. I think out of, well, I don't know, it's just their nonverbal is like screaming, even though they're not speaking. The way that they behave is like so fun to watch. So out of these six kids, four of them, so two sets are couples, and then my daughter and the one other boy are not a couple. So the couples kind of were exclusive, like they would literally like physically turn their backs to the singles and ignore them like they were on the fringe. So I thought that was interesting that they were kind of shutting out or shunning the single kids. They're not rude about it, but they're all into their couple interaction. And I noticed that the one boy who is single didn't want to be there. He was like dragged. And he sat there with his legs crossed, his arms crossed. I mean, his body language was completely closed off, like I am being tormented. And also very interesting watching some of the other teenagers. You can see that some of the girls, especially, that maybe are a little self-conscious, they don't put their head up when they walk. They look at the ground. Their shoulders are kind of slumped over. And to me, that spoke a lot to self-confidence. And you could see a lot of the boys would have really confident strides with their shoulders back and maybe looking at where they were going and making eye contact. And I noticed that mostly the girls use a lot of hand gestures and head gestures, and definitely women use more than men. And I really didn't notice that the boys used any gestures at all. They all were ridiculous about flirting with each other. The girls would giggle about everything, and the boys were more physical, I noticed, than the girls with touching. And it says, how can you tell? It was obvious just by watching. There was a lot of like paying of compliments going back and forth, and touching and flattery is what I said. So I thought the men used, or the boys used more eye contact. They also needed more space, and questions at the end about what can you tell about a person by their physical appearance. I think people by their physical appearance usually tells you how they feel about themselves, so their self-confidence. A lot of people you can tell by looking at their shoes how uh, they feel about themselves. A lot of wealth is, I think, shoes. If they take good care of their shoes or whatever. And it said, what do you observe by what people carry or bring with you? I didn't observe anything about people carrying stuff with them. I normally only observe moms with big, huge diaper bags. Um, how do humans show territorial, whatever? I noticed that one of the boys was very territorial about his girlfriend, that he physically had to have his arm around her and like a verbal stance, like she's mine, kind of an aggressive behavior. And I think that that goes on to show power and dominance, aggressive behavior, tone. So there's my summary.
Okay. Ian, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't read through all of these before I chose my elementary schoolers as my study group, so some of them don't apply necessarily.
No,
But
same with me.
but so my group was there. So I have some interesting kids at school. There are some kids that kind of like to be by themselves. We kind of have like this small group that likes to play their DS or on the Wii that we have at our school that we provide. And so like we always get people to turn on the Wii, but on their own DS they can. It's however long they want to play. And so sometimes they kind of get their own little group going, so they only really include other people who have a DS, and then they'll all play together, just wirelessly through their DS games. Then we have other kids that will play like Legos or some of the other games that we have, but no one really gets excluded necessarily because the little kids that some of the kids don't want to play with the like one or two in particular, but those one or two don't really care, and they'll just play with them anyway. And it's actually pretty funny to watch, just because they'll be trying to like scoot away from them, and then they just keep following them, start playing with them, and then eventually they just kind of give in to them and let them play with them. Um, the the way the kids sit, you can definitely tell how they feel, just because I don't. Maybe it's all children, or maybe it's just the ones that I watch, but they're very emotional, and they show their emotions very easily. And so if they're not feeling very well, like if they're sick, or which is going around right now a lot through the schools here, or if they're sad or if they're hurt, like you can just look at them and kind of tell what is going on at that moment. The way that they walk, you can tell between the younger kids and the older kids. They have a slightly different walk. The older kids are a little bit more, what's a good word? More conscientious of their surroundings, I suppose. So they kind of know like what they're doing, and they kind of have more of a feel for like this is who I am and I know what I'm doing, and more confidence, I guess. Well, the kindergartners on the other end of the scale are just kind of run around and do whatever they think is a good idea, which isn't always a good idea. But let's see.
Isn't it kind of like herding cats?
Sometimes it kind of is. Yeah, we probably have the most of kindergartners at our particular site, and so they they're just funny. They do a lot of interesting things and they say funny things. But gestures they use, they're oh man. I think I would agree that women, like the girls that we have, probably have the most gestures. The boys are just kind of straight and talking, and they don't really use their hands much or heads or anything. They just kind of talk, and they'll just look at you while they're talking, and the girls will look all over the place or use their hands, or really they use their whole bodies to speak, and they'll be walking around and talking and stuff like that. Flirting, I don't really see much flirting going on. They're elementary schoolers, so there's not much going on in that aspect. Eye contact, I'd probably say men as well. The boys definitely, like if I'm talking to them or if they're talking to me, they'll most of them will look at just kind of stare at me and at my eyes. Um, Space, I don't, I wouldn't. Um, I think the girls actually use more space, or at least when they're talking to me or the other teacher who's also a male. So that may have something to do with it. But the if it's one of the boys, they tend to sit closer to me and like will be up in my face while they're talking. But the girls will almost always be a little bit further apart. So, but that, like I said, that may be because I'm a male and they're a female. But let's see. You can about their physical appearance. You well, with elementary schoolers, definitely you can tell what they like by what clothes they wear, what their backpack is, or their lunchbox. You can tell what kind of shows they like, or what kind of genre of television they like, anyway. And the territorial or territoriality? No. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that. Anyway, let's see. The most is probably not only with their own stuff, but with the stuff that we have. Like we have different games and Legos and, like I said, the Wii and things like that. And if they build something with Legos, then they're all about that. It's like, don't touch my toy. I built this or whatever. And or like if they're playing the Wii, they'll be like, no, I can do it. Like even if they don't know how to play the game, they'll be like, no, I'll figure it out. And they'll just kind of be struggling for like 5 or 10 minutes trying to figure out how to play the game, and they won't let anyone else teach them because they're like, no, it's my turn. I get to try it. So they're definitely particular about those things, and the power, dominance, and submission. I think with kids, we have a few different kinds of kids. There's the kids that are just kind of like leaders, like they just kind of say like, this is what we're gonna do, and then they have a couple kids that'll follow them, and we have several groups like that, and you can tell who's kind of the antagonist in that group, and I think it's interesting that even at that age, they look for somebody to follow, even if there's like there's one, like we have a kindergartner who we have like a couple of the older kids that'll even follow the kindergartner at times. So it's just kind of interesting in who they choose to follow at what times. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Jordan, do you want to go?
I'd rather you go first.
Sure.
I didn't read the
No.
question first. I'm just trying to remember
No,
because
that's fine.
the only other group I have is like a group of horses, and that doesn't count really. So I'm just trying to remember what the primary kids did yesterday.
Because
Otherwise, it's just
don't,
girls at the
but
bar.
horses don't
I
wear
can't remember what they did.
horses don't wear shoes or carry bags.
They've got their own kind of bling.
Yeah, they have quite a bit of nonverbal communication. I can answer all the questions for things all the horses did, but they're not
Yeah,
very
she didn't specify humans.
good.
No, that's fine. I'll go. So obviously, who was included were the people, and actually, now that I think about it, as Ian talks, some of the kids on the playground as well as they are rushing out of the door on Friday. So it's interesting to see, like as the moms come, they will, you know, who knows each other or who socializes with others, because they will go and like congregate together, and the other parents will be just kind of standing by themselves. And let's see. And there's a lot of what would I say? Try not to be too judgmental. There's lots of workout ladies that come to pick up their kids after school in their yoga gear and their whatever, and you can kind of see them just checking out the other people and kind of I don't know. It's just funny. It's definitely a certain group. Um, and usually, I would say the ladies that kind of all congregate together, they are definitely more, for lack of a better term, strutters. They kind of strut up to the school and feel like, I'm sure they're, volunteering in the class, and so they feel like they have a part of the school, um, and I as well. I think that women do gesture more in conversation, and are probably more dynamic as far as kind of emotions that they show as they talk about things. Um, and then there are some dads that come after school, and usually the dads are just kind of hanging out by the fence, just waiting for their kids. And it's funny because a lot of times, if it's someone that the ladies know, they'll all kind of hen cluck around him and gather, which is kind of funny. Oh, let's see. And in that situation, I kind of, in some ways, consider that a little bit of flirting, and I don't think it's not anything, romantic or anything, but it's a way that they make themselves seen. Let's see. I don't know about eye contact. Maybe men. I'm just thinking, like in the situation at work where I bring people back and am talking to people. Men are usually more, kind of looking and seeing what's going on, and a lot of times women are more, kind of sitting introspectively, sitting with their head down or something. I think that women use more space. I think, though, there are some men who kind of, when they kind of walk into the room and like kind of suck the air out of the room, or for lack of a better term, they have a big personality, so they take up space that way. But I think, in the most part, probably women, we
Tara,
tend to kind of spread.
at work, when you have to approach somebody to take like their blood pressure or whatever,
Yeah.
who shrinks back more?
It depends why they're there. Usually, it just depends on the person, because there are some men who are not so worried, and some women who are not so worried, but in both cases there are people who are more timid. Let's see. I think that you're right, that what you can tell about a person by their physical appearance is kind of how they see themselves. If they, their kind of self-value, if they are, let's just say the yoga ladies, and they feel confident in, letting the world know that they work out, or the ladies that show up and carry their bling purses and whatever. I think that you can kind of see, and then there are some people who, for lack of a better term, they're just, there are some poor kids that go to the school, so you can, they definitely stand out. The moms who, come to pick up their kids and are not in the stylish clothes. And as far as how do we show territory or territoriality, I think is how you say it, but it's funny because as I think about the ladies that I see at the school every Friday when I go to pick up the kids, they go to the same spot every Friday. You could just like draw a circle around it, and that's where they'll be. Or they'll go, there's one group of ladies that go and sit at a certain they have picnic tables in the kids' playground, and so the parents can walk in and just sit down and wait for their kids to come out. So there's one group of ladies that go to a certain picnic table, and I'm sure that if there was another lady who didn't know and went and sat there, that I'm not sure what those ladies would do. That's their spot. um,
Don't you see that though, like at church too?
yeah,
Like
Yes.
people have benches,
yes.
and if you sit, like the first bench in our sacrament meeting is the Sixel bench, and it's like scandalous when somebody like new moved into the ward, the Trents moved into the ward, and they went and they sat on the Sixel bench, and everyone was like, ah, they're sitting in the Sixel's bench.
No, old people are the worst. We had this old couple that they always used to sit at the very back on the inside of the aisle, and I guess a new family came in, and they were sitting there, and the old people walked in, and just look on their face, they were so confused. They kind of stood by the doors for a bit. They're like, because they didn't want to go sit with, it was like a bunch of young kids, so they didn't want to go sit with them. They like wandered up and down the aisle and then found a seat.
I think that we're creatures of habit, and
Yes.
Tara, what you're describing, it sounds so much like high school, like at the lunch table.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Heaven forbid that, you would,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But
Anyway,
I
it's
think that,
pretty funny.
I think that situation speaks more to lack of self-confidence, that they have to like sit together in a herd.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. I think that it's their comfort zone, and they don't have to go outside their comfort zone, kind of a thing. And how do humans show power and dominance? I think that sometimes, well, I know that, when I get irritated with someone or I have to talk stern to someone, you kind of stand up straight and you use a sterner face, and I think that's a good way. And then submission, I think that you're kind of a little bit more relaxed or kind of shrunken in, and you kind of lower your head a little bit. Oh, I think in a lot of ways we're kind of like animals that way. So, all right, and that is my Roosevelt Elementary soliloquy here.
Okay, so for mine, I realized that I did watch the primary kids. I'm the primary pianist, so I can watch the little primary kids over the piano. So I got them. And they are, I think we have one that's 11, and the rest are like under 8 type of thing. We have quite a young primary, and there's probably about a dozen of them there. And they're quite rambunctious kids. There's maybe 1 or 2 of them that actually sit the whole time. Others are kind of psychotic. But what I noticed is the ones that are shut out it seems to be the ones that cause the least amount of disruption, because most of them cause disruption. Those are the ones that the other kids notice and feed off of them and keep going, but the ones that are quiet, no one really notices, or they'll not want to have them in group type of things. There's a couple kids that their family life isn't the best, and you can kind of see it reflects in how their personalities are sometimes. When they're sitting, you can tell because they don't usually pay attention. They're not sitting upright. They're usually trying to fiddle with stuff under their desk, because they're trying to play with toys type of thing. They're not really focusing anywhere close to the lesson. And they also walk like they don't really care where they're going. They're just kind of going where someone told them to go sit here, so fine, I'll go sit here. They don't really have any, yay, I'm going to primary type of thing. They just, okay, someone told me to go here, and they just kind of walk off with their head down type of thing. And gestures, I found it depends on the age a lot, because some of the, like the 8-year-old, 9-year-old kids, they tend to not flail as much, whereas the little kids, when they have an answer, they usually jump up and kind of run to the front so they can say their answer, and they want to be really close to you so that you're only looking at them instead of other kids who might have the answer, but their answer is better, so they have to make sure they're right there to tell you their answer. Um, questions. They're primary, so they don't flirt in primary. They're just little. Although there was this one little boy and girl. They were all. They would just. He would just like. He would always specifically say hi to her every morning, and then he would blush and run away. So that was always kind of cute. Eye contact. It's also I found I didn't think there's really a difference between the guys and the girls. It seemed to be more dependent on how they were living. Like some of the less confident kids, they didn't want to meet your eyes or anything, and ones that were more confident did. More space would be the girls because they just ended up jumping up more than the other little boys did. They would just because she would jump up and run across the room, whereas they would just jump up kind of at their spot. So I guess she used a little bit more space than the other guys did. I guess for physical appearance, again, it's just how they are carrying themselves. Like there's one little boy, and his shoes are often untied and stuff, and he's just kind of a rambunctious little boy. Whereas the other ones they care more about their appearance. They make sure their shoes are always tied. They don't like getting wet or anything. They tend to pay more attention. I've noticed they don't get as easily. Territorial, oh my goodness, they are so territorial over their little chairs. Like, it's ridiculous. If they sit in the wrong chair, it's like a free-for-all little match they have, and it's very loud and pushing and needs adult intervention sometimes, so it's quite entertaining. There are ways to do it that they want the other person to know that they have done wrong, and loudly and surely, and yeah, I guess that's about it. I guess there's power and dominance and such, as they do it loudly. They want the other person to know without uncertainty that they have done wrong. They are in their spot. That about sums up primary.
All right. So our last, is there anything that anyone disagrees with or has found different or? Okay. So I guess the last one is, let's see. As a group, discuss the rules of touching. Imagine that a friend from another country comes to you for help. He understands that the rules that govern touch vary from culture to culture. He certainly doesn't want to give offense or be perceived as creepy, so he asks you the rules. As a group, create a document that outlines the rules of touch in your culture. If some of your group members are from different cultures, be sure to point out where the rules vary. Describe the rules of touch in the following relationships below. Okay, in each case, point out how the gender of the participants also affects the rules. Okay, so
Be right back. You can
I
keep
guess, okay.
No?
So an adult and a 5-year-old child.
So I have a question.
Yes.
When it says create a document, are we writing this down? Is that what we're doing?
I think if we take notes and then just type it up, I think that should probably work.
Okay. Sounds good.
Are we typing it aside, or what did we just decide? Sorry, my sister.
Just gonna take notes and type it up. Each of us, I guess. The thing that was interesting to me, as I was doing my medical assisting training, I had a class that was taught by one of the teachers, and she did it on people who are touchers and non-touchers. And because when you're in the medical field, I mean, you're kind of up close and personal with people. And so you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. And so you need to kind of take those verbal cues or nonverbal cues and try and make the people feel as comfortable as possible. But so an example of a toucher would be someone who comes and shakes your hand and like pats your arm at the same time. That's a person who's a toucher. Or they instead of shake your hand, they hug you, something like that. and a non-toucher is just really someone who doesn't even really like to shake your hand. They'd rather talk to you or do that. They don't want to touch you. And I thought it was interesting because she took it into like families, and so if you have a family member who is a toucher, let's say a mom is a toucher and a child is a non-toucher, it can really cause like issues. So if you're a non-toucher mom and you have a non-toucher child, the thing that you like to do together, you like to maybe read the child books, or do things like that that aren't so, I don't know what, like physical. That doesn't mean that you don't cuddle your kids or anything like that, but that's not something that you'd rather read or draw a picture with them or something like that, and that's how you show that you love them. But the toucher mom would be having the kid always by her side and snuggling him and cuddling in the blanket, whatever. And so you can see how in families that could cause trouble, and with husbands and wives too. If there's one person that's a toucher and one person that's a non-toucher, that the toucher person or the non-toucher person could be really bothered by the other person. So
Well,
anyway, that's my
we
random
have
thought
that
of
dynamic.
touching.
We have that exact dynamic because, surprise, I'm a toucher. And my oldest, my 20-year-old, he's my snuggle bug. Yeah, he's on his mission, but he's a very affectionate person. And so, he had no problem, even in high school, um, if I picked him up from school, jumping in the car and like giving me a big squeeze. But my daughter, who's a senior, is like, she has a huge bubble the size of Alaska around her. And she doesn't want to be, you touch her and it's like an electric jolt of electricity. She's just like, ew, why did you do that? And so I was like worried about it. She's an introvert, but I'm like, she has no physical contact with, she might as well be like in a Russian orphanage. So I read to her this article about how children have healthier mental stability if they have 7 positive touches a day. And so I'll just walk by and be like, 1, and it drives her crazy. But I've shared that with so many people that when she sees friends, like we were at the movies last week and she saw a couple of friends of ours, and they like made a beeline for her, and they're like, 2, 3. So, people are patting her and hugging her and counting, and she now thinks it's funny. But I have to be careful not to step into her space, and I also have to be careful to not be offended that she doesn't want me in her space.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that can happen between husbands and wives. If you have like a toucher and a non-toucher, that one person can really get their feelings hurt and not even understand what the other person's problem is. Anyway, random
I
thoughts by
think
Tara.
the first question asked about, and well, I personally think any adult touching between adults and children, unless it's, a familial, unless they're family, or unless it's a setting like a teacher, like my primary kids, they like to come and, fight over who's going to sit on my lap. And at school, though, it's very different. We are trained over and over and over not to physically touch the children. And it's hard because some of these kids, they just want a hug, but we're told not to. And we can be really in big trouble because it can be perceived something different, especially male teachers to students. So
Yeah.
it's in a way, I think it's sad. I work at a really low-income, at-risk school where I know these kids sometimes are not getting the human touch that they need, and they're just craving anything. And so even though, we're like expressly forbidden hugging. I see what a difference it makes to just when I see them in the morning to touch them on their shoulder and be like, "Good morning, Esmeralda," and then they just like light up. And we're allowed to do that, you know. But it's like interesting how some it's okay to touch on the shoulder, but you're not really allowed to touch their head or their face, or you know, there's all sorts of rules about where it's okay. And same thing. Okay, I'm going to share something. I might have shared this before. I think I might have. But my neighbor across the street is a member of the church, and I was getting my mail, and he and his wife were getting out of their car, and they've got 5 young kids, and you know we're friendly with them. We've interacted, you know, had dinner back and forth kind of a thing, but we're not like besties. We don't hang out. So I would not say we're super close. So he's like, "Hey neighbor, haven't seen you in forever," and they're like, "What's new?" And they came over and we're chatting. So he comes over and stands behind me and is rubbing my back while he's talking to me. And I was completely weirded out. I was all,
Yeah,
"That's
that's
weird."
kind of creepy.
Yeah. So I think there's weird people, like maybe he thought he was being like friendly and brotherly, and I was like, ew. But his wife is like inches from my face talking to me, so she's like right here and he's right next to me. So neither of them thought, you know, I was trying really hard not to like react and be like, "What are you doing?" You know, it was just the most awkward, you know, and they're like 15 years younger than I am. So there was no flirting. It was just very like, I don't know. It was weird. So when we had like this whole thing about touching, I'm having flashbacks like, oh gosh.
So, would you say then, as an adult, that you need to be maybe invited by the
Yeah.
child's parent to give them a pat or a hug or a.
It's
Okay.
probably wrong, but I think it's like approaching someone's pet. You know, you ask before you pet their dog. Just the same, you know, like I don't know, as a parent, we talk to our kids and taught them about inappropriate touching, and we talked to them about stranger danger. So how is it okay to be like, "Nobody blah blah blah," and then all of a sudden, "Yeah, that's okay if you want to sit on their lap and cuddle." What? You know? So it's hard. I don't know. Ian, you work in a school.
Yeah, and with our kids, we give lots of high fives
Yeah.
and things like that, just because
Bumps.
there's only 2 of us that work there, and most of the people that work for the group that I work in are girls, but they're all at different sites, and so the 2 people that work at our site are both guys. And there are times where the kids will come up and they'll give us hugs, and I mean we there's nothing you can really do about it. We just give them a hug back, and then we just try not to make a big deal out of it. Because
Mhm.
we don't, like, they do that because that's how they, like, we have the touchers and the non-touchers, like Tara was saying, but they do that because that's how they just show that, like, hey, I like you, so I give you a hug. And we don't want to make that seem like it's a bad thing. And so we just kind of give them a hug back. But we do a lot of high fives and things like that, but
But
we,
you're not saying, "Oh, come here and give me a hug." You know, it's
yeah,
just like a
exactly.
spontaneous thing.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
But I would agree, it's hard in the schools now.
Yeah. Okay, so an adult and a 12-year-old. I think that's
I
weirder.
think it's similar to the 5-year-old. I think it's kind of the same type of thing. Because I put like handshakes. I was thinking of church. Like you always give the little kids a handshake or whatever.
Hmm.
But I put also kind of formal that you're always
Okay.
waiting for the other person to kind of engage. Actually, I put formal for all of them pretty much except for the 2 good friends. That's formal. You tend to wait for the other person. You pretty much anything past like handshakes type thing is not really appropriate. I
That's
thought
what
kind of unless it's like you're
Jordan.
able like unless
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I put inappropriate as a response to all rules of touching except for between 2 good friends.
Yeah.
Because you have an established relationship that
Hmm.
is, I think, more, and I don't mean intimate sexual, I just mean intimate like two
Mhm.
good friends. You don't have like any of those social rules. Like, I would never hug my boss. Well, actually, that's not true. Um, the assistant principal in my school, he's like a robot, and his name is Pedro Garcia, and he is even the way he speaks is very robotic, and everybody loves to give him a hard time. So he just left our school to be a principal at another school, and he came back and had lunch last week, and my coworkers were like, "Hey, Miss Cathcart, you're like a big hugger. You're like the only one that can get away with hugging Pedro. Go see how many hugs you can get in during lunch." So I got 4. I got a count of 4. So that was pretty funny at work. Totally inappropriate.
But you were not coming in the morning and giving him a hug before you went to your class or something.
Yeah.
So yes, okay.
I think it's just that currently in our society, unfortunately, it's too much of predatory and like what they consider preening or whatever. It's sad because I think that Satan probably uses that to exploit inappropriate touching, but he also uses it to shut down people who need human contact.
I think lots of time too, because like what I've noticed is I tend to be a touchy person. I don't notice other people's boundaries as much. I've gotten better, but I noticed that sorry, my sister just ran through the house. That was weird.
As long as she's not naked, it's okay.
Yeah, no, she's just weird. Oh crud. But I noticed that sometimes I totally lost my train of thought.
You were talking about knowing your boundaries.
I don't know. It'll come back to me maybe.
Okay.
Sorry.
I think you can tell though. People, well, you know what? I find a lot of people, like when you meet somebody, they'll put their hand out to shake, but then they'll be like, "I'm a hugger," and then they'll hug you.
So in my situation, like where I work, the doctor that I work for deals with diseases and disorders of the breast. So we see lots of breast cancer patients, and so it's usually we're there for the diagnosis of cancer, and so these people are sometimes pretty distraught. And there's been several times where I felt like it was appropriate to just like put my arm around them and say, you'll be okay, kind of a thing. And so in that situation, I felt like it was okay. But I don't do that. I wouldn't do that to everyone, and it definitely is situation dependent. And that's kind of out of the norm for me because I am a non-toucher person. So, which is kind of funny, but just I had never even thought about it really before until I had to take that class in school, and then I was like, oh, okay, I am a non-toucher. So.
I think it's also interesting though, Tara. Do you appreciate it though as a non-toucher? Can you think back to some times where somebody has made you feel like you're really visible to them, that they really are connected to you, that they're genuinely interested, and it has been dovetailed with a touch and that didn't bother you?
Yeah. Well, and as well with non-touchers, they're fine with touching if they initiate it, but it's when other people kind of initiate it without like necessarily expecting it or kind of wanting someone to do that. So like with my kids, I'm very touchy, I'm very snuggly. I like to have them sit on my lap, and I'll lay with them in bed and sing a song or whatever. But as far as other people coming and I like to have my space. Let's say someone that you don't know comes and sits down and slides right up next to you. I'm like, okay, it's time to scoot over. I don't really know you very well. So anyway.
What if you don't like it when you engage the touch, but you like when someone else does? Where do you then? This is a random question.
Wait, say that one more time, Jordan.
Because usually I don't like to engage, like, and go and hug anyone, but I don't mind being hugged. Where does that put me?
Hmm,
Shy.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering as far as
But okay, but like if you meet someone,
curious.
when you first meet someone, if you okay, like an example of a toucher would be you shake their hand and you like pat the other side of their hand with your hand as you're shaking it, like it's a two-hand handshake kind of a thing. And so a little bit more touch to it than just a formal single handshake kind of a thing, or you pat them on the shoulder as you're shaking their hand or something like that. I think that I would say, if you like being touched and you don't mind touching people, you're just kind of more hesitant about it, then I would think you would still be a toucher.
I remembered my comment. I think that now also people, they view touching as different. Like, whereas before you could give someone a hug and no one would think twice, whereas now people read into it and they're like, oh, why'd that person do that? Or what does that mean, type of thing. That's where my train of thought was.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, neighbors used to rub each other's backs, and it was okay.
Maybe. Maybe their last neighbor was really touching. You look like her.
No,
that
okay,
was the morning ritual. You never know.
So here's an example.
Yeah, I'm very touchy,
Okay.
but I was completely like creeped out.
Yeah. Okay, so here's an example. I have cousins who are Tongan, and so in their culture, you kind of like, I don't know what you do, like face touch, or it's not even, it's like you're almost face touching, and that's how they greet each other. And so,
Yes.
and so that's kind of weird. But it's just part of their culture, and so if you know that, I'm okay with it. But that would be really weird to me if someone just came up and did that. Or
don't you know people, like I know people that they converse, they want, a good distance, like an appropriate distance, and then there's other people that are like right up in your grill, and you're just like backing away, like, whoa, hey, you're in my personal space.
Yeah. And then as well, we have a friend who's Portuguese, and so she always invites everyone over, and we joke and say she's the Portuguese connection for the area that we live in Idaho, because wherever she goes, if she finds someone who speaks Portuguese, they're usually Brazilian. It's like whatever next event she has at her house, they're all there. And so like with the Brazilians, they like to as well, like hug and kiss, like air kiss by your face. And so it's just interesting, the different cultures and how they kind of greet each other, and what's okay and what's not.
I see that at work, the way the parents say goodbye to their kids. Our school is all minority, and there's a big difference between going to my school. The Hispanic parents always hug and kiss their kids, and I don't see that with other nationalities.
That's funny. And I lived, now this is kind of another nonverbal thing. Okay, so I lived a year in Japan, and in Japan it's very rude to make eye contact with people when you're walking down the street or sitting in in a train or a bus. It's rude to make eye contact with people, and so you kind of get into this more submissive type of way of being, and it was interesting to come back to the United States after being there for a year, and you realize like how much people look at each other in the face.
The new assistant principal, the person that replaced the robot, she's worked in our school for a while as a special education teacher, and then she took the administration position. And she came into my room and said something, and she said, "How are you?" And I said, "Happy." And she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I don't know." And she's like, "That's like the weirdest response I've ever heard to asking someone how they were." And so I think it's like culture-y. She's like, you're always grinning, like you know something, like you just, swallowed a canary. I'm like, okay. So she thinks it's like suspicious behavior to be happy. So it makes me wonder what
Do you think
background she came from. Because I'm plotting, I'm gonna overthrow the school. Something.
You look like a shady type of person, Sharon.
Yeah.
That's
All
funny.
right.
So anyone else have any out of country experiences?
I think it's just my husband's from Mexico, so all of his family they do. I don't remember if they do one cheek or two with the kissing thing, but it's not like a kissing thing. It's just kind of like you push your cheeks together.
Yeah,
strange.
it's just a
But-
touchy, like a face touch.
Jordan, I think that's the first time you've mentioned a husband.
Yes.
What?
You're holding out on us.
Well, come on. So how long have you been married?
I got married August 2013.
Okay.
Okay.
A year and a half, I guess.
Newlywed?
Pardon?
You're newlywed?
Yep.
Ian, are you withholding?
Nope.
Okay. Are you taking suggestions?
Suggestions in what manner?
Like, look you've got 3 sources that can set you up.
Oh, well, if any of you know anyone in Oregon,
Okay.
just feel free to let me know.
I do actually. I do know someone who was in Oregon.
Is it a girl?
Yes.
Well, we wouldn't try and set you up with a guy.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, you just never know if you network. We'll all keep our eyes open.
I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Can I ask how old you are?
I'm 23.
Okay. Just making sure. You could have been like a surprise, been like 28 or something. You didn't look 28, but just wanted to double check.
It's fair enough.
Okay, the surprise would be 28. Okay, this is our perception here. The surprise for me would be like 50.
That's the exact number I was thinking. Exactly.
Well, like, that's the thing. My friends are all gonna be like 20 and 21, like me. She's 28. That's a gap.
Okay,
Well,
all right.
Sounds like Jordan might have a love connection.
Oh, all right. Well, I guess if there is nothing else to add, we will type our document up and submit it.
I hope other people listen to our conversations. I hope they're amused by them.
I hope they are too.
Other people's are as weird as ours.
I don't know. I
I don't know.
watched some of the other groups and they're a little more uptight. So it's okay.
I know. Okay, so our is next week. We're giving our speech to each other again. Is that correct?
I think so.
Hey, can we talk about
Okay.
that? Do you want to stop the recording so we can ask a question, or do you care? Just let it roll.
Let her